Hey, it's Rob from Dowdle Family Farms. I've been dreading moving these pigs across the road for several days now. It's time for them to go. The weather's cool, so they'll be able to handle the limited shade in this open pasture a little bit better. Also, we're going to get ready to plant clover and some other brassicas in the next few days and weeks ahead, and so really what I need them to do is to start rooting up the ground, taking down the material that's there, the grasses, eat what they can, and then prep the ground for planting other forage crops for them to eat this coming spring. The reason I've been dreading this pig move is because I've just gotten this fence on the right side of the screen up. The pigs really do not like moving across the road and around corners, and it's not the most convenient way for them to move. Also, the pigs, when they get into a new paddock, have a tendency to run under fences. So this is the first time I've attempted making this pig move, and the first time you do a new pig move, it's always a little more difficult, even with pigs that are a little more used to being moved around like these are. They're used to going from paddock to paddock, and you can see that the bulk of the pigs ran into this paddock really well. There are still 3 that are not in the paddock. One of them is to the left in the woods, and 2 of them are down in the bottom that I'm going to go get. I should have immediately run back and gotten those other 2 and put this gate up, but this was a boneheaded move on my part that could have ended in disaster. All that to say, though, I was really pleased that the pigs ran into the new pig paddock very, very easily. I mean, they saw where they were supposed to go, and they started making a loop around the whole 5.5 acre field. They're not really exploring the middle of it. They're just walking along the fence line and seeing where their boundaries are. And in a little while, they'll test those boundaries, and a few of them will run under the fence. It always happens. I'm coming up the road with these last 2 pigs that were stuck in there, and I get them into the pen. But at that point, those pigs that were making the loop all the way around the edge of the field are starting to come back. You can just see them by that IBC tank. Now they're starting to come back, and I'm thinking that I can get them in there with the bucket of feed. But instead, what happens is as soon as I start walking in there with a bucket of feed, right near that little willow, the pigs wind up running around everywhere. Some of them come out onto the gravel road. I realize that they're not going to come back, so now I'm starting to run back over there, and I put the phone down and start trying to herd the pigs down the road. Again, pigs do not herd very well. They are not herd animals, and if they decide they want to go somewhere, they go wherever they want to go. I'm waving the bucket around and waving my arms around just to make a big presence. I'm not trying to hit the pigs. Rather, all I'm trying to do is just make a little noise and point them in the direction that I want them to go. For my gates, I use just a simple, small, like a 18 gauge wire that runs across, and then I electrify it. It's something that I can easily put up and take down. It's a lot cheaper than just purchasing gates for every single crossing. That'd be several $100s per gate, and there are a lot of gates out here, so it costs several $1,000s. But once the pigs go through a gate or a gap like that, and you put up an electric fence back, they will run through that electric fence. I'm telling you, they know that what it is, they know that it's there, but because they've gotten accustomed to running through that gate gap, they just will run straight through that electric fence. So that's why I'm putting up this hog panel behind it. The hog panel is really just a visual barrier, and after a few days, they won't even try to test that gap again. But for now, that's just what I'm doing, is I'm setting up that electric fence, and then I'm tying that cattle panel up to the gate. But all in all, this pig move has turned out really well, surprisingly well. I've still got 1 pig in the woods that I've got to catch. It turns out I caught her a little bit later and put her into the paddock, so it turned out really, really well for me. I should have put the pig feeder in there. It's just a bung feeder that I cut the legs off of. It's designed for cattle, but I use it for pigs. They can stick their heads over in there, and it keeps them from eating off the ground. Had I done that, I think the pigs would have seen the feeder and would have gone in there and stayed more readily than if I just fed them off the ground like I did. So now I'm going to walk through the paddock and show you some of the stuff that the pigs are eating when they first get in. Into this paddock, this is where the soybeans had grown and the caterpillars had gotten them. Army worms, I think is what they were. These pigs are in here and they are eating a lot of stuff that I would not have expected. That Mangalitsa Hampshire cross right here in front of me is eating willow. I didn't know that they would eat willow, but apparently she's doing it. Right now they're eating this morning glory vine that's right there in front of them. They're finding some other stuff on the ground. I'm not sure what all they're rooting on. That pig right there is eating on some rape. It's just a brassica similar to collards or kale that pig is eating. And I planted a little bit of that. There's not much in here though that's come up. Planted that in August with the soybeans. But that pig is tearing it up, the leaves. Forage rape has a high protein content in the high 20s, if I'm not mistaken. I like how she grazed and didn't pull the whole plant up. Further down that direction, there's some soybeans that are starting to regrow and actually have bean pods in them. But they're eating a lot more of the grassy stuff in here than I would have expected. We'll see how they do. Today's high is supposed to be about 70 or 75 degrees. No higher than 80. But there's very, very little shade in here except under a handful of willows further back in there. And it's not going to be a whole lot of shade for these 34 pigs, but we'll see how they go. So this is the road I moved the pigs down. I brought them out of the paddock they were in the woods over here, and they came on down the road. The problem that I was concerned with is that even though the pigs were hungry, most animals do not make sharp turns very easily. And if I had moved them directly across the road to a gate, it would have worked out well, or brought them down the road and then kind of over, it would have worked out well. But you can see they had to walk this direction, and then when they got down to this end, they had to make a very sharp left-hand turn into the field. I had these cattle panels up where I didn't want them to go, and it turned out to work quite well, but I was not expecting it to be as efficient as it was. So now I'm going to get their feed troughs and their water set up, and then I'm going to go carry some water into the paddock to give them a little bit of a space to wallow. The fence on the right is off. I turned it off before I moved the pigs so that I could easily disconnect their fencing and all. The water trough tends to fill up with some mud from the pig's nose. That electric line across the middle of the water trough there that you can see keeps the pigs from getting into the water trough and tearing up either the trough and especially the float valve that's in the bottom of it. But the problem still remains that after a week or 2 or 3, the dirt from the noses and the mouths of the pigs when they stick their noses in there will easily get water into the water trough. Little did I know that the fence where I was putting this was on. I picked it up and was not shocked. Interestingly enough, people always tell me that, oh, I touched that electric fence and it grabbed hold of me and I couldn't let it go and my neighbor had to knock me off of it. Or they'll say stuff like they touched the electric fence and they couldn't let go of it. And typically, people that say that kind of stuff with electric fences are just fabricating stuff. I'm not sure why they do it, but the fence pulses. And when I picked up that bottom fence, it was off. It was on, but I did not get shocked because I picked it up in the middle of a pulse. I immediately remembered that it was on, and that's when I tested the voltage. Riding the four-wheeler back up a little bit ago as I just turned it on. But this water trough is set up and it's ready to go. It's a gravity-fed water trough, and it turns out really, really well. I'm putting this little post underneath it just to level it out a little bit more for these pigs. But all in all, the pig move went well. Moving the water went well. The pigs have stayed in there. Looking back a little bit afterwards, I did see that the pigs ran under the fence once or twice, but all that'll stop here pretty soon. Anyway, I'm getting the tractor and I'm going to come back and create a wallow for the pigs and put some more water in this water trough for them. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, like it, share it, and subscribe.